Welcome back to the Adam Schefter Podcast. The 2025 NFL preseason, 49 games, is now in the books. History. And we can move on to the start of the 2025 NFL regular season. But before we get to the regular season, of course, there are so many people prepping for their fantasy football drafts across the country. And to help us get ready today, we are going to be joined by the lead characters from Establish the Run website, Adam Levitan, Evan Silva. They'll be here to offer us guidance on the players that you should be drafting and the players that you should be avoiding. But before we get to Adam Levitan and Evan Silva, we're first joined by the co-host of the Pat McAfee Show, my friend, my colleague, Ty Schmit, the host of this week's Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Schefty. As always, it's great to be here with you. Hey, listen, we can drum up a lot of faux excitement when it comes to the NFL throughout the year and some of the dog days. There's no need for that anymore. You just mentioned it there, off the rip. Hey, we got fantasy rosters that are being completed. We have final, cut down day is right around the corner. We're actually going to know who's going to be on everyone's teams to some degree. And we're a little over a week out from the first NFL game that actually matters. Listen, hey, if you're an NFL fan, this is the best time of the year, bar none.
It's an awesome time. It's very exciting. You're getting ready for all the action that begins. College football already has kicked off. And I don't know about you, Ty, but I'm just being honest. There's something about fantasy football drafts that gets me all fired up. Like, I really look forward to draft day, and I love mulling and thinking about the players that I should be taking and my draft strategies. And again, we're going to get to that here later on in the six pack.
Well, let's hop right into the six pack then, Schefty. We had some massive news that broke a little bit earlier today. Let's go to topic number one. If you are a fantasy guy and you're looking at wide receiver and you don't really know what you want to do, you can officially take a deep breath. If you have Terry McLaurin on your team, him and the Commanders got a deal done today. Can you kind of walk us through that? And was this expected the entire time?
I will say, no, I was not expecting it this morning on the one hand. But on the other hand, we've been saying this for weeks. And I think I said it on this podcast a few weeks ago. We were doing it around August 5th. And I said, these are deals that don't have to get done on August 5th. They have to get done August 25th, September 5th. They have to get done in late August and early September. And to me, that's what this was all about. The Commanders' money was the Commanders' money. You could push them around, maybe get up some incentives, call the deal what you want, $32 million a year. I think that's dressed up a little bit. I think the deal will be more in the lines of what both sides were talking about. But it doesn't really matter because Terry McLaurin gets a strong deal. The Commanders get their wide receiver, and it gets done now. And it gets done now because, frankly, it has to get done now. There's no other choice. The Commanders play a week from Sunday against the New York Giants. They don't really have another great wide receiver. And so they've got to get this guy under contract when he means so much to that team. And look, he's been in Washington when they've had all these different starting quarterbacks every year. This is the first time, I believe, in 10 straight years that they're going to have the same starting quarterback in week one from one year to the next. And now, if you are Terry McLaurin, you want the deal done. You want it taken care of. It finally is. And Terry McLaurin is now under contract to the Commanders through the 2028 season with a 3-year extension.
Yeah, it just makes complete sense. We've talked about it time and time again. This guy has been the consummate professional for Washington when everything was upside down. From the time he got in there, he's reliable. He's going to play. And if there's ever a time to do this, if you're Washington, you pay him when you got Jaden Daniels on that rookie contract, because obviously a couple years from now, Jaden Daniels is going to be making $65, maybe $70 million a year. Right. So they're in a window right now where you got to capitalize on what you did last year, and to pay a guy who has basically done everything right for your franchise and show those other guys, hey, if you get drafted here and you play here and you do things the right way, we will reward you. So I think, good on the Commanders, good on Terry McLaurin. I'm glad that this thing has officially come to an end.
We both are.
Yeah, I bet. All right, let's move on to topic number two. A couple more similar situations that haven't come to an end and don't look like they're going to come to an end anytime soon. What can you tell us about the hold-ins with Micah Parsons and Trey Hendrickson?
Well, again, Ty, as we tape this on the afternoon of Monday, August 25th, we are now entering the time where deals have to get done. I have a little bit more hope that Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals can find a solution and move towards a deal to get him under contract because that's the right thing to do. It doesn't feel that way on Micah Parsons and the Cowboys today, and we'll see how it shakes out. As one person described to me about a half hour ago, and we'll see whether it turns out to be true, they said this is Jerry Jones' Waterloo. This is what he is going to be very strong about, and he's not going to budge. Now, again, we are now entering a period where these things have to get done. Terry McLaurin got done. The Bengals and Trey Hendrickson are talking. We'll see if they can figure out a way in the end. And I've said this to Trey Hendrickson before in the past. Like, you've got to take a deal. You've got to get something done here. You've got to do that. Like, what are the options? And so we'll see if they can figure out a way to get it done. Micah Parsons and the Cowboys, though. Ty, holy cow. We got a guy on the training table in a game. I've never seen that before. We've got another person saying this is Jerry Jones' Waterloo. We've got zero negotiations. Zero. Like, at least Washington and Terry McLaurin were talking. Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati talk. Dallas and Micah Parsons not even talking about a new deal for months now. And you know what else? The Dallas Cowboys open the season on Thursday, September 4th or 5th. What is that date? That Thursday night?
That is September 4th.
They open the season Thursday, September 4th. Even if the two sides improbably and impossibly figured out a new deal today, which they're not going to do, Micah Parsons is going to be, at best, limited in that game. That's if he even plays at all. And right now, he says he's got back spasms. As we're taping this Monday, he was not spotted at practice. His back is tight. The Cowboys say his MRI came back clean. He says his back is tight. How can you prove that your back is or isn't tight? Right?
Yeah.
Now, what would be interesting would be if the Dallas Cowboys decide to get serious about that and they want to pursue legal action and file a grievance against him for not being able to play when he says he can't play. And they say he is healthy enough to play. Could that happen? That would be interesting. Could Micah Parsons file a grievance against Jerry Jones for unfair labor practices through the NFLPA for going around the back of his head? He could do that if he wants. So in this war of words and war of actions, it's a soap opera that goes on, and we might not be done yet with where it's going. And we'll see how that plays out over time. But again, solution in Washington for McLaurin. Discussions about a solution for Hendrickson in Cincinnati that still feels like both sides have to make up some ground. No discussions with Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And the more that this carries on, the harder it is to wrap your head around it. I hadn't heard that comment about, Jerry saying this is his Waterloo. I mean, if you know anything about history, obviously that's a pretty strong statement. And I have seen a lot of people now post Cowboys Jerry Jones doc on Netflix making the parallels between, hey, the Herschel Walker trade and, what the potential haul for Micah would be if he were to do that. And if you just watch this and you see his personality and the way he's dealt with these things throughout his life and throughout his time as the owner of the Cowboys, I don't think it's as simple as, they're just going to kind of shake hands and redo this whole thing in good faith. I mean, you said it, you think it's likely headed for a divorce. So we'll see.
In time.
Yeah.
When I say that, like headed for divorce, like all of a sudden I hear people saying, oh, they're getting divorced. I'm not saying that right now. I'm saying the way things have gone right now, I believe that it would be an upset today if Micah Parsons signed a long-term contract with the Dallas. It would be an upset today.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and then that doesn't mean, I think when people hear that, they obviously get excited and, oh, wow, my team is going to trade for Micah Parsons maybe this week and we're going to have him for the whole 2025 season. I don't think that's the case. And then the Hendrickson stuff, it's kind of just, that's a waiting game. I feel like at this point, both sides are dug in. I don't think he wants to sit out games, but he says he will. So, these are two things that we are going to be talking, up to 15 minutes before kickoff on September 4th, and then if nothing is resolved, guess what? We're going to be talking about it the following week too. So neither one of those stories are going anywhere, so we'll keep an eye on them. Let's move on to topic number 3, Schefty. It's kind of an interesting move in Minnesota. They trade Sam Howell to the Eagles and then sign Carson Wentz. Has anyone had a more interesting QB year thus far than the Vikings?
I just want to take a look at this, right? So they wind up re-signing Brett Rippon. Sam Darnold, they try to re-sign, talk to at least. He decides to leave to go to Seattle. Then they talk to Daniel Jones, try to keep him. He goes to Indianapolis. They have discussions with Aaron Rodgers. That never goes anywhere. J.J. McCarthy, they're waiting for him to come back. He becomes the starting quarterback. They trade for Sam Howell from Seattle. They sign undrafted free agent Mac Brosmer, who's actually looked pretty good this summer. They trade away Sam Howell to the Philadelphia Eagles, then sign Carson Wentz. That's a lot of quarterback movement for one team. And so I think all along they wanted somebody who was experienced, who they believed in, who they could count on to back up J.J. McCarthy. I still believe in J.J. McCarthy. I still believe he's going to be the guy. But boy, oh boy, that's a lot of quarterbacks that have either been there, been linked to there, been through there, been traded from there. That is a ton of quarterbacks. It's just incredible how their offseason has gone. But now they are ready to go forward with J.J. McCarthy. He opens the season a week from Monday Night Football. Little known fact out here, Tide. J.J. grew up in the Chicago area. He was a big Bears fan growing up. His first ever football game that he ever attended in person was the Bears-Vikings. Went down near the field, got some pictures taken, still is the program from that game, and now he'll be opening up in Chicago, officially, his first NFL career after not playing last year, and the Vikings quarterback room has been crazy.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think the thing to keep in mind, too, is J.J. McCarthy was their desired starter the entire time. None of these moves really did anything to even create some sort of competition in camp necessarily or supplant him at all. All these moves are very obviously geared towards, okay, who is going to back up J.J. McCarthy? Because he is our guy. We don't want him looking over our shoulder. Really, everything post-Rodgers has kind of just said, hey, they're comfortable with what they have in J.J. McCarthy. They're ready to see it, and they're ready to let him be the unquestioned guy in Minnesota. Let's move on to topic number 4 of this week's six-pack, Schefty. This news came down literally right as we ended recording last week. The Colts named Daniel Jones their starting quarterback over Anthony Richardson. What does that decision tell you? And can you just kind of break down that entire situation?
I think there were people from the moment that they saw Daniel Jones' salary at $14 million a year. When they saw that number come in around the league, they're like, there is the Indianapolis Colts starting quarterback. Now, early on in camp, it seemed like we were getting some positive reports about Anthony Richardson. But he came on, he hurt his pinky. There was a little bit of inconsistent play. He's still enormously talented and gifted, but I don't think that this team ever was waiting around for Anthony Richardson when it signed Daniel Jones with the idea that he very well could be and likely would be its opening day starter. Daniel Jones is a guy, I know people will look at that and say, Daniel Jones. I remember when he was becoming a free agent this offseason, there were a couple of teams quietly in the quarterback market with coaching staffs in front office that really liked Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones had more support around the league than people would know and realize. And there were a lot of people who were Daniel Jones supporters. And not only were they supporters, but on top of that, the Colts paid him the $14 million, which is more than Aaron Rodgers is being paid this year from the Pittsburgh Steelers, which tells you that the Colts were paying him at a high enough salary to start this year. And I think all along, he was the guy, if you listen to what Shane Steichen was saying about getting the guys in the huddle and getting them lined up and making the right calls and all the things he was describing, he was pointing an arrow at Daniel Jones. We said on this podcast last week, Did we not say we thought it would be Daniel Jones?
Yep.
A couple hours later, it was Daniel Jones. That's been the prevailing thought around the league. And that doesn't mean that Anthony Richardson's done there, but it's Daniel Jones' time. And Shane Steichen could not have made a stronger statement by coming out and saying that he's our guy. We're planning for him to be our guy, Daniel Jones, for the rest of the season. He didn't come out and give them a short leash at all. He gave them the whole 2025 leash. Daniel Jones is our guy. So that's how it looks like it's going to be. Daniel Jones is your quarterback, and we'll see how the Indianapolis Colts, your Indianapolis Colts, fare there, Ty.
Yeah, and it's, around Indy, there was a lot of backlash. Fans were not happy. They wanted to see Anthony Richardson start because I think, kind of signals to them if he's not starting, it's like, okay, we whiffed on that pick. We blew a top 5 pick on a quarterback who doesn't appear like he's going to be the guy in the future. And also, it's like Steichen and Ballard aren't guaranteed another year. Jim Irsay passes away, and sure, it's still in his family, but like if they have a bad year, there's a good chance both those guys get fired, so they're not just going to hand the ball off to Anthony Richardson if he didn't win the job. Winning games is important. They need to do that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think from really when Anthony Richardson kind of hurt that pinky and that point forward, it looked like, and then again you have the Green Bay game where he doesn't look great. So it's just one of those. It's unfortunate. Hopefully he gets an opportunity. I just don't know if that opportunity is going to be in Indianapolis with the Colts. Let's stick in the AFC South, Schefty, with topic number 5. What can you tell me about Joe Mixon's status? Obviously, we know the Texans went out and got Nick Chubb, but I don't know if he's all the way back from that horrific knee injury he had a while back, and obviously the Texans are going to rely heavily on Joe Mixon if they want to go where they're envisioning going this year.
This has been the biggest mystery injury of the summer. He is on the NFI, non-football injury list, which means that he suffered an ankle injury away from football, when he's had ankle injuries with football. Nobody knows, well, there are people that know, but nobody's saying what exactly happened. So the Texans have until 4 o'clock Tuesday to activate Joe Mixon. I don't expect that they will. Now, I might be wrong. Nobody's confirmed it, but I'm not expecting that the Texans are going to activate Joe Mixon by the 4 o'clock deadline on Tuesday. And if they don't activate him, that means he gets moved to the reserve non-football injury list, which automatically rules him out for 4 games. There is a question as to when or if Joe Mixon's going to play again this season. I can raise that question because nobody yet has answered it. Nobody's been willing to answer it. And look, we'd love to see Joe Mixon come back and play again this season. But there's been a lot of mystery about exactly what's wrong with him. The Texans had him lined up to appear at a football camp the first day. He didn't show up. He obviously hurt his ankle away from football. We don't know how or what that was. He hasn't been seen from all summer. Again, they could activate him. I don't believe they will. I don't believe they will. Nobody's willing to say anything. They've been very, very tight-lipped about this. But I will say now, as we record this Monday, 24 hours in advance of that deadline, I will be very surprised if they activate Joe Mixon, which means he won't play the first 4 games. And I'll say it again. I think there's a question as to when and if he will play again this season. And if somebody wants to correct me and point out why, please let me know why that's wrong. I've certainly made enough calls to enough people. Nobody's offering anything. So I'm going to say it again. I think there's a question when or if he'll play again this season.
There we go. And hopefully you get some sort of response from that because obviously, you would know if you're a Texans fan, you would know. Not really being like a massive fan of the Texans, this kind of caught me by surprise when I saw this, especially when you allude to they're being very cagey about what happened with it, so
if he's fine, tell me.
Exactly. If there's nothing wrong, then it's pretty easy to just squash that bug immediately. And
nobody's told me he's fine. Nobody. Not one person.
Right. So that does, kind of make you think like, okay, well, what's really going on here? So that'll be interesting. That'll be, and like you just put it out there. Hopefully somebody reaches out and you get some sort of clarity on what's going on in that situation because this is a big deal. This is a big deal for the Texans. No doubt.
It'll be a big deal on Tuesday when it comes down. I expect him not to be activated. I expect him to be out the first 4 games.
Boom. There you have it. Okay. So something to keep an eye on if you're a Texans fan especially. All right, Schefter, let's move on to the sixth and final topic of this week's six-pack. What about the Florida trainer who, kind of gives his fantasy forecast each year? What's he saying this year?
All right, Ty. So every year we do these fantasy picks, and I love to get on various people. We had on Field Yates a couple of weeks ago on the Adam Schefter podcast. You could tune in and listen to Field's picks. Last week we had on fantasy guru John Hansen. This week we have on Adam Levitan and Evan Silva from Establish the Run. But we also, over time, have always asked this trainer, Pete Bomarito, from Bomarito Performance Systems, which has training centers in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, South Carolina. Pete Bomarito, Bomarito Performance Centers. I always ask him, Pete, he trains over 100 football players. He's with all these NFL players all offseason. Who are your fantasy guys? So last year, he predicted to us that Aaron Jones, Kyron Williams, and Terry McLaurin all would have huge years. And they were all mid-round picks, and he was right. They all did have huge years. So we went to Pete Bomarito again, and we asked him who's going to have a big year this year. And his first response on rookies is Jaguars rookie running back Bashal Tutin will have the biggest impact of any rookie. Any rookie. Expect him to contribute early and be consistent this season. He's the fastest running back I've ever seen, which is what we saw at the Combine. So he likes Bashal Tutin. He also likes rookie sleepers. Broncos running back B.J. Harvey will play and contribute more than people are predicting. By midseason at the latest, I expect him to be a force. Broncos wide receiver Pat Bryant will play a lot and be productive. This might be a bold statement as the 2025 draft was tight and heavy, but I expect Seahawks rookie tight end Elijah Arroyo to be the most productive of all the rookie tight ends. So he likes Elijah Arroyo, he likes Pat Bryant, he likes R.J. Harvey, he likes Bashal Tutin. He also likes Ricky Pearsall. He'll have a Pro Bowl year, solid fantasy stats. Last year he said Blake Corum would bust out, the Rams running back. He never really did, but he said Blake Corum and the Ravens wide receiver Devontae Walker hit. I'm still excited about the 1-2 tandem of Williams and Corum in the Rams backfield. And Browns running back Jerome Ford will enter the season as the starter and remain the starter and be way more productive than fantasy draft experts are expecting. And he also still believes in Rashid Shaheed. So that's Pete Bomarito from owner of Bomarito Performance Systems, training centers in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, South Carolina. His fantasy picks for the year. Now, those are Pete Bomarito's. Now we'll give you a different vantage point. The men that founded, own, created, and produce for Establish the Run every week to help you get ready for your fantasy football drafts. From Establish the Run, Adam Levitan and Evan Silva. All right, welcome back to really what might be one of my single most favorite times of the year. Everybody is getting ready, or already has done, their fantasy football drafts. And to continue our theme on focusing on fantasy football, which I am obsessed with, are my friends from Establish the Run, Evan Silva, Adam Levitan. We want to bring them on today to help you get ready for your fantasy drafts. Evan, Adam, thank you again for continuing our annual tradition.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
It's always great to be here with you, Adam. Thanks so much.
You guys get fired up as me for this time of the year?
There could not be a more fun time of year, especially now. There's so many more people that are like into it on a serious level that you get into some better debates and I think sharper debates. So yeah, it's a beautiful time of year.
This is the time of year that I start getting nervous because it's easy to make predictions, and then about 3-4 weeks in, you're like, oh boy, this one's going south. This one's going south. You know, I mean, this is the easy time, and then it starts to get hard week 3, week 4. But yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm excited though.
Okay, so Evan, let's start with you and give me some guys. I guess we could make this broad and simple. And each of the 4 positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, that you feel strongest about. And we'll let it go from there. And Adam, you can follow.
In the context of ADP, Trevor Lawrence's ADP right now is about quarterback 20. And I think that I have him quarterback 10, so I have him as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. I think he could take a really big leap. I think that Travis Hunter is going to be electrifying with the ball in his hands. I think that Brian Thomas, by the end of the season, he might be considered the best perimeter receiver in the league. Super, super dynamic talent. And I think that the move to hire Liam Cohen is really going to pay dividends. We saw what he was able to do last year in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield. Staying with the Jaguars, I'm super excited about Bashal Tutin, who has looked incredible in the preseason on his opportunities. I think that there's a chance that Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne could get traded before the season. And Bashal Tutin is just a phenomenal athlete, 4.32, good in the passing game. I think they're going to make sure that he has a role right away. I really like Ricky Pearsall this year as well. I think that he takes a second-year leap. I mean, the guy began his rookie season getting shot right before the season began, and he was able to come back and make an impact, a big impact, in the final 4 weeks. Our buddy Matt Harmon, who does a website called Reception Perception, charting routes, just showed that Ricky Pearsall was an elite route winner versus man coverage. He's also a guy who can do a lot of stuff with the ball in his hands, sort of a little bit of what the 49ers used to get from Deebo Samuel. And I think that Ricky Pearsall can do some of that. And then at tight end, I like Jake Ferguson. I think that he's going to catch 75 passes this year. He's really cheap in drafts. I think the Cowboys are going to be a pass-heavy offense. They don't really have a feature back on their roster right now. And so I think they end up throwing the ball a lot. The last time that Dak Prescott had a healthy season in 2023, CeeDee Lamb caught 135 passes, was the number one overall fantasy receiver. Jake Ferguson had 71 catches. And I think to have a 70-catch tight end as cheap as where Jake Ferguson goes in drafts, I think is stealing.
Yeah, I like all those for sure. I would say the player that I have the most of and I have the most conviction about this year is at the wide receiver position in the mid-range. And I think this is the place you want to be hammering wide receiver in your draft. My favorite one is George Pickens. I don't think we got to see George Pickens' real talent shine through in Pittsburgh. I don't have a lot of respect for what Arthur Smith has done or Matt Canada. They have Mess at quarterback for the whole time there. Dallas sees, hey, he fits well with CeeDee Lamb, really well with CeeDee Lamb, and goes out and trades for him. And I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I don't think they're going to be able to defend that well either. And so I think we'll see a lot of volume from Dallas's pass game, as Evan was alluding to. At running back, it's this pocket in the second round that I think is the most important one for people to be aware of. I would consider that Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, and my favorite of the group, Chase Brown. To me, those 5 running backs are the key to the draft, and understand that you can get one of those guys in the second. Chase Brown is my favorite. Zach Moss, we know, is out for the year. Samaje Perine is going to be a strict pass down back. 6th-round rookie Taj Brooks is behind Chase Brown, and I think the Bengals are going to be the league leader in points scored here this season. Tight end for me is going to be Tyler Warren. I think Daniel Jones cannot throw deep. I mean, he just can't. And so all these checkdowns, all these short passes, it should go through Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. I like Tyler Warren as someone they identified 3-4 months before the draft and were like, we're going to get him and build our team, or at least our pass game, through Tyler Warren. So I like that one. And then quarterback, I think it's a good year to take elite quarterback, one of the top 4. But if you don't, I certainly like Trevor Lawrence, like Evan said, and I'll add Drake May to the mix here. Can run, I think will run more than he did last year. Gets the offensive line upgrade with Will Campbell at 4th overall. Gets the weaponry upgrade with both Trevion Henderson and Stephon Diggs. And so I think Drake May has a really fantasy-friendly game that's going to go to the next level this season.
And gets Josh McDaniels back as the offensive coordinator, which helps him, I would think.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. And definitely helps Trevion Henderson out as well. But I think Josh McDaniels much better as a coordinator than a head coach.
Adam, you brought up George Pickens. I'm curious to know why you're so in on him as much or more so than any other player. Just a little bit more Pickens explanation here.
Yeah, I think if we saw Pickens not in Pittsburgh, people would be like, oh, yeah, he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. I think as a prospect, he had a really bad injury in college, would have been a first-round pick easily and much more heralded first-round pick, if not for that. I know people are going to say he can't keep his head on straight. Has all these attitude issues. He's in a contract year. And maybe Adam knows more about this than me, but if he can play well this year and keep his head on straight, he is going to get a massive contract in free agency. And so, and the bigger point to me is like the environment in Dallas. They're going to struggle to run the ball. They're going to struggle to defend. They play in the dome. Let's see what happens if we try to get Dak to 4,500 or 5,000 passing yards. I don't think that's crazy.
You know, the thing about George Pickens, a few things. When he was playing in Pittsburgh, what was always told to me is he is the single most talented wide receiver in the league, George Pickens. They can't believe what a freak he is. The questions were his reliability. They never knew if he was going to be late for a meeting, if he was going to show up at the stadium. You know, I had George Pickens on the podcast, my podcast last year. Really engaging, nice. Oh, boy. Okay, hold on one second. Hold on.
Feeling going down?
Hold on. We're going to have a B-Rob trade. Oh, boy. Okay, hold on one second.
No.
Hold on. All right, we're back after that little break, being called away, taping this Friday afternoon. And as we were taping this, all of a sudden we got besieged with texts about a trade coming down. And the trade now has been made. The Commanders and 49ers have agreed to a trade that will send Brian Robinson to the 49ers in return for a 6th-round draft pick. Just literally came down. We tweeted the news moments ago. We're back on the podcast here with Evan Silva and Adam Levitan from Establish the Run. You heard that whole thing transpire as we're just putting out the tweet and on Instagram. What is your immediate takeaway to Brian Robinson going to San Francisco for Washington and San Francisco? Adam.
Well, the first thing that I see, I have never seen you so happy and excited. This is like the first time you see a woman or something like that. I've seen Adam was the most excited I've ever seen him to break that story. I actually thought Isaac Guerendo had a pretty good year last year, and I think it'll be a battle between Guerendo and Brian Robinson for some of that base back work. I just think they've had so many injuries behind Christian McCaffrey. Jordan James been hurt. Guerendo's been hurt. Patrick Taylor's been hurt. Almost all of their running backs have been hurt except Christian McCaffrey. So I guess you could maybe spin this that they're trying to take work off Christian McCaffrey. My first instinct, though, is it's more about getting depth behind there, and Guerendo's been banged up, Jordan James been banged up, and they didn't give up much, a 6th-round pick, to get a pretty decent player in Brian Robinson. So I'm not worried about the CMC stuff here yet, but I am worried a bit for Guerendo.
Yeah, and Isaac Guerendo was a player that, he's been hurt in training camp. He was hurt almost his entire college career. That's why when he came out, I think he was a 7th-round pick. He was a crazy athlete, but he had very limited production because he was hurt so much in college. They just can't rely on him to stay healthy. I was listening to Matt Barrows, who's covered the 49ers for a really long time, on a podcast the other day, and he was talking about how at 49ers camp they've really taken it easy on Christian McCaffrey in an effort to try to ensure that he is healthy for January and, not use them all up in August and September. I do wonder if they might take some off of his plate on purpose in an effort to keep him healthy late in the season. I think from Washington's standpoint, we already had it built in that Brian Robinson was not going to be a Commander this season. And the backfield now goes to, I think Austin Eckler probably plays 55%, maybe even 60% of the backfield snaps. Chris Rodriguez takes over as the 2-down pounder and goal line guy. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a sort of change of pace. I know that he's got a lot of hype on him right now. He caught 7 passes in his Division I college career. And he's 206 pounds.
7?
7. Yeah, now he did play at a lower level college before, and he had some catches there, but he was a backup there. And then he had 7 catches over the last 2 seasons at Division I. So, and he's a 7th-round pick. I think he'll be an 8 to 11 touch per game guy, but I think it's going to be a 3-headed monster. And you also have Jaden Daniels to worry about. We have him projected for like 900 rushing yards. So it's really like almost a 4-man backfield. I'm staying away from it in Washington. I think Brian Robinson becomes a pretty decent handcuff for Christian McCaffrey.
Brian Robinson in San Francisco, if anything were to happen with Christian McCaffrey, would and could be productive. The amazing part with the 49ers is they're decimated at wide receiver with injuries. They're decimated at running back with injuries. Christian McCaffrey was like the only experienced, healthy running back that they've had before making this trade with the Commanders. But we'll see what this does for Washington's backfield. It's built to run the shotgun, and Brian Robinson is better in an I formation type backfield. Washington loves the RPOs. That's not the type of offense in which Brian Robinson thrives. He thrives when he's getting the football over and over and over again. That's where he needs to be, and maybe San Francisco will provide that platform. Before we got interrupted, we were talking about some of the people that you felt like you had the strongest convictions on this year. So now I want to go, and I'm going to do it a little bit more in depth. We're going to flip it to the back half of the draft because we mentioned the names in the top half of the draft. So I want a name in the back half of the draft. Oh, you gave me Trevor Lawrence, Evan, so that really is an exception. But give me another quarterback name. We'll start with quarterbacks, and we'll start with you, Adam, that you feel strongly about in the back part of the draft where somebody can make a pick, find a value, and help them win a fantasy championship.
Yeah, I said Drake May for the first one. I think that's a good one. I'll give another one in that range, which is J.J. McCarthy. Now, I think they're going to run the ball a bit more than they have in the past. However, we have seen this scheme, this Kevin O'Connell scheme. I have maybe the most respect for in the entire league, or at least one of the most respect for his ability to scheme offense in the entire league. You're also playing a dome. You also have Justin Jefferson. You'll get Jordan Addison back. You have Hawkinson. You have Aaron Jones. We have seen Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, all put up big fantasy outputs as the Vikings quarterback. And I know people say, at Michigan, he wasn't that impressive. They didn't need him to throw. I've seen much worse quarterback prospects than J.J. McCarthy put up big fantasy games for the Vikings. And so I think him and May are probably my two favorites in the kind of late quarterback range there.
J.J. McCarthy, I think, also could be a sneaky, big-time rusher for Minnesota. And this was before his knee injury, mind you, but he ran a 4.48 40 and had a 6.8 3-cone. I mean, that is big-time athleticism for a quarterback.
I'm a J.J. McCarthy fan, and I think he's going to do it. Yeah, he's going to do well. He's a nice guy. He is a nice guy. He's just a very thoughtful guy. In fact, I saw his father at the Michigan golf tournament last month, and I went over and I said, "You did a heck of a job with him." He always remembers my daughter's name. He'll always say, "Hey, please send my regards to Dylan." And I'm like, how would he remember? I brought it to his dad, and his father said he's that way with everybody. He remembers all the names of all the people all the time. And he's just a thoughtful, nice guy. It's hard not to root for him. All right, Evan, a running back in the back half of the draft that you feel strongly about that can be a league winner.
Well, Saquon Barkley had 482 touches last year, including the playoffs. And I thought he looked out of gas in the Super Bowl. He's a player that has averaged almost 320 touches per season over the last 3 years. And it's just historically, and he's starting to get old. He's 5 years younger than both Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. And I just think that, I have Saquon Barkley as a top 5 pick. I've drafted him plenty. I've done about 55, 60 drafts, and I've drafted him 6 or 7 times. But he is a player that, just historically, that workload can catch up to a guy. I really like Will Shipley. And the Eagles cleared the deck for him to win the number 2 running back job. Kenneth Gainwell is gone. A.J. Dillon has not been terribly impressive. So I think Will Shipley is one of those clear-cut handcuffs who could become a league winner in one of the best offenses in the league if something happens to Saquon Barkley, who has been overused and is nearing 30.
I am in full agreement with you. Love Saquon Barkley, but think the idea of having Will Shipley, I would never draft Saquon Barkley and not take Shipley. Never. That's me. But I've drafted very little Saquon Barkley. And by the way, I took Barkley last year in a lot of places. So I was in on Barkley. And it's not that I'm not in on him. It's just that he's not surprising anybody this year. And for all that work, you want to have that insurance in your back pocket if you're rostering Barkley, in my mind. Adam, who's your running back in the back half of the draft that you think could make a difference?
Yeah, I'll go with a guy that we mentioned briefly already, but has some standalone value, and that's Bashal Tutin. I know that it looks tough in front with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, even if Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne last the full season on the roster, which I'm pretty skeptical of at this point. But if they do last the full season on the roster, that does not mean that Bashal Tutin cannot carve out a big role for himself. I know a lot of people really liked him as a prospect coming out, so I think that's one that can be standalone. And then Jaden Blue also in kind of a similar vein. Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, not exactly big obstacles. I think Jaden Blue can come in and make some noise for Dallas.
Do you think there are any similarities between Blue and Tutin, the way they play, the way they'll be used, the type of explosiveness and quickness that they have?
My impression is that neither team views them as like a base back, a workhorse back right away, but both teams view as can help us from a change of pace right away. And sometimes that's how it starts and it grows from there. That's how the Bucs thought of Bucky Irving to start last year. And, you start as a change of pace, you excel in that role, and then you work your way later in the season into a more firm role, I think is the way it'll probably go for both Blue and Tutin.
The Bengals thought the same way of Chase Brown, and we saw him become a workhorse, especially in the second half of last year.
Adam, do you have a wide receiver in the back half of the draft for me?
Oh, baby, yes. I will go with there's two that I think are really close for me. I'll cheat and give two. The first one is Darnell Mooney. I don't know if Adam has information on this shoulder injury that Darnell Mooney has, but it does not strike me as overly serious, even though he's missed a lot of camp time already. I think Michael Penix has a chance to be 4,000-yard thrower here in his first full season as a starter. You're going to get into a lot of shootouts with Atlanta, and you're talking about Ray-Ray McCloud, Kyle Pitts. It's not going to be pretty behind Drake London in terms of target earning. And so I thought Darnell Mooney had a really good year last year and is set up in a really good environment once again. And then the other guy in this range in the back half of the draft is Rashid Shaheed. On a per route basis has been awesome, one of the best deep ball catchers in the league. Last year started to show he can do more things closer to the line of scrimmage. And if you saw in the second preseason game, Kellen Moore was using both Shaheed and Chris Olave underneath much more than those guys had been used previously under there. So I think Shaheed can do both this year, get deep and earn targets short.
Shaheed is a bowler that people forget about. Hurt last year after 6 games, I believe. Had him on my War Room fantasy team. Was crushed when he suffered a season-ending injury. And he was really good, and I would imagine he'll be really good again. We'll have more on him in a moment. Evan, a wide receiver in the back half of the draft that you feel strongly about.
I think that Darius Slayton is a guy who, he's been around, okay, but he's never really been. He's always been. The Giants have always made him fight for stuff, and I don't think he's going to have to fight for stuff this year because they gave him a 3-year, $36 million deal with $22 million guaranteed in the offseason. He's locked in to the Giants' number 2 receiver role opposite Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors, by the way, he's been banged up like throughout training camp. I think he suffered 3 separate injuries. None of them seem serious, but it's just something to keep in mind. And it's something to remember that he has this toe injury that may eventually require surgery. There's some injury risk with him. But with Darius Slayton, I think I like the way that he fits the way that Russell Wilson plays. Russell Wilson, although he is obviously on the downslope of his career, he can still throw the deep ball. He's one of the best deep ball throwers in the league last year with Pittsburgh. That's the strength of Russell Wilson at this stage of his career, maybe the lone strength of Russell Wilson at this stage of his career. Darius Slayton can run. Darius Slayton can separate. He ran 4.39 coming out of college. He's always had high yards per reception stuff. And then Jackson Dart had the highest average depth of target of any quarterback drafted in April at 11.1 yards. And Jackson Dart is coming on strong, man. He looks awesome in the preseason. He's had, 3 appearances now? And he's crushed all 3. And he could throw the ball downfield. That's what they did at Ole Miss. So I think that both of those quarterbacks, no matter who's under center for the Giants, Darius Slayton's skill set complements the way that both Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart play.
And it's interesting, you bring up Darius Slayton, he's a free square. Because in a 12-team league, he's not even going to be drafted. In a 16-team league that I have for ESPN, which is just brutal, Darius Slayton would be a great last-round pick.
Yeah.
Like a last-round pick. And you're right. When somebody's paying you $12 million a year and $22 million guaranteed, they envision a meaningful role for you. So just follow the money. Like, there are certain players that get paid certain money. You have to watch that. Darius Slayton fits right into that category. I agree, Evan. All right, last category there, a tight end in the back half of the draft, Evan. Who do you like there?
Well, I talked about Jake Ferguson earlier. Another tight end that I like late is Tucker Kraft, who I think is maybe like a Diet Coke version of George Kittle, because he is a beast after the catch. There's been a lot of debate about Matthew Golden and Jaden Reed and, which Packers wide receiver is going to step up. I mean, what if the answer is just Tucker Kraft? They would throw him screen passes last year, and he was good in the screen game. I usually don't love when teams throw screen passes to their slowest skill position player, a tight end. But Tucker Kraft averaged over 9 yards per reception after the catch last year, which was the best among tight ends. And they like him as a blocker, so he's not going to come off the field. Really physical player. I think he could be a breakout player. I also think the Packers are going to throw the ball more than they did last year because Jordan Love is healthy. Jordan Love was banged up a lot last year, and they're going to be more aggressive in the passing game. That's going to be good news for Tucker Kraft.
Tight end in the back half?
I said Tyler Warren earlier. I also think Colston Loveland, the other rookie, is interesting for sure as wider range of outcomes, upside plays at tight end. If you were trying to be a little bit safer, there's two veterans that I like late. I think Cade Otton's gotten a big boost from the Chris Godwin situation and the Jalen McMillan situation. But Godwin at earliest back in October. We'll see if he can even do that. And then McMillan may be out for 2 months. And so I think we'll get a nice kind of runway here for Cade Otton to be a big part of the Bucs passing game. And Cade Otton is basically free. And then the other one is Chigakonkwo, who earned a bunch of targets down the stretch last year. Quarterback play just cannot be worse than it was last year. I'm optimistic that Cam Ward is going to be able to get Brian Callahan to kind of where he wants to be in his offense. And I think Chig, their secondary pass catchers behind Calvin Ridley are just an absolute mess. And so I think Chig has a chance to be second on the team in targets there, at least for the first month or so of the season.
How do you pronounce the Titans rookie wide receiver from Stanford, Alec?
Iominor, I believe. I could be wrong.
He may have some fancy relevance later this year. That's a name that, last round could be kind of interesting. We've touched on some names here that we like. Is there anybody that you feel like you don't have any exposure to in any best ball drafts you've done, in any league drafts you've done, whatever it may be? Is there a player that you have not drafted for whatever reason because the vibes are not great?
Yeah, this is a scary one, but I have been shying away from Tyreek Hill where he goes at the 2-3 turn. He's been going 24th, 25th overall. It is difficult and the data is very clear. Once you start declining and you're over the age of 30 at the wide receiver position, it's very rare to spike back up. Now, you can say Tyreek had this hurt wrist situation last year. Quarterback play when Tua went down was obviously atrocious. It's been weird this offseason for Tyreek also going from I don't want to be here, Devon Achane shouldn't be the goal line back. Does not seem like Mike McDaniel really has appreciated a lot of these comments anyways. And so I don't know, is Tyreek Hill even going to last the season? I don't believe he has any guaranteed money on his contract beyond 2026. So that's one that I've been shying away from as a wide range of outcomes. And at the 2-3 turn, I like my range of outcomes to be a bit tighter there than I think it is on Tyreek.
Evan?
DJ Moore is kind of, he's coming off a rough season. I mean, it might have been his worst season in the NFL. I mean, both from and on and off the field. I mean, he had bad body language. He's supposed to be a team captain, had bad body language throughout last year. The Bears go out and they add 2 big-time pass catchers in the top 40 picks in Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. And that's like a red flag to me, to the holdovers. I mean, these are guys that were handpicked by their new coach, Ben Johnson. And Rome Odunze was the number 9 overall pick in the draft in 2024. And I think that he's going to take a step forward. Cole Kmet is still there. Olamide Zaccheaus looks like he's going to have a role to begin the year. And I just kind of don't know where DJ Moore fits into all this. I think that DJ Moore can have a fine season, but I don't think he's going to be the Bears' clear-cut number one receiver. I think they're going to spread the ball around to a lot of different guys. That's what Ben Johnson did in Detroit. He kept everybody involved. I mean, he was throwing, calling, end zone passes to backup offensive linemen. They use 2 running backs. They use 2 tight ends at one of the highest rates in the league. They use 2 and 3 receivers a lot. So I think that there's going to be a lot of ball distribution in Chicago, and I don't think that there's going to be a guy who's clearly featured, and I don't think that guy is going to be DJ Moore.
I'll say this, if I'm going to weigh in my 2 cents on this, I think Devon Achane is unbelievable. I can't stand going up against him in fantasy. Incredible player. But whenever I hear now a player with a soft tissue injury coming out of training, it always makes me a little leery, right? And so that's the kind of thing that gives me pause. Now, somebody's going to take Devon Achane, and if he gets healthy, then I missed there, right? I didn't get the guy, and he has the chance to be a fantastic player because I'm not questioning his talents or abilities. But those soft tissue injuries, those always worry me coming out of camp. I think I learned my lesson last year with Christian McCaffrey.
Just close to the season, too.
Yeah, well, it goes into the season. It goes into the season, right? Like, I don't know that he's going to play in week 1. And then all of a sudden you get the guy, and now you're missing your first-round pick in week 1, and you're leaning on whoever it may be. It's not ideal. Not a knock against the player. Great player. Gifted player. Explosive. That kind of thing makes me very, 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 very nervous. Right?
Oh, agreed. I mean, the McAfee thing, I feel like, has sent everyone for a loop. Like, we don't get official injury reports during preseason, and so now everybody's like, oh my God, he's day-to-day with a calf. We can't take him. But, we'll see.
I touted establish the run before I brought you guys on, but I'll give you guys a chance to tout yourselves before we sign off and have people get ready for their fantasy drafts. Where can people go? What should they know? What would you like to tell people about establish the run?
Yeah, I would just say if you're as pathetically serious as Adam is about fantasy football, then you need to be on Establish the Run. We take this stuff as serious as we possibly can. We have a whole team of roughly 15 people working on this stuff 24/7 to make sure that we have accounted for every little thing so that our rankings are up to date for your draft. So you can just head to establishtherun.com. Check out what we're working on there.
And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me today. Sorry for the interruption there in the middle.
That was great. That was the best part of the whole thing.
That's the life we live. You know what? It was funny because you say you hadn't seen me like that. And I was driving to Pittsburgh to go play Oakmont for the first time this summer. And I was sitting next to a guy that lives in my town. And I got this call that the Steelers were getting ready to trade for Jalen Ramsey. And I was like, okay, all right. I'm all wired up. And he looked at me afterwards when it all got done. And Jalen Ramsey and Micah Fitzpatrick and John. And he's like, I've never seen you like that. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't like people to see me, in an element when things are happening like that. That's kind of like, that's kind of sacred time, right? Like, you don't want people seeing certain things.
Well, I was going to say I can see because sometimes people will be like, man, why does he still do it? It's such a stressful life. But then I see this is what actually makes your blood get going. There's more to life than just, whatever. It's like, oh, this actually got my blood going. And I can see that there. So good for you.
Well, I appreciate it. You know what else gets my blood going? Fantasy football and the fantasy drafts, and they're coming up. And that's why I appreciate you guys being with me today. It is time to go immerse myself in Establish the Run and get ready for the fantasy drafts that I have coming up next week. And again, like I said, one of my true favorite days of the year. Adam Levitan, Evan Silva, Establish the Run. Thank you both very much for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having us.
So there is Adam Levitan and Evan Silva from Establish the Run. Always love listening what they have to say and who their fantasy picks and ideas are for the coming season. Again, we talked about this, Todd. What a great time of the year. We appreciate everybody joining in. It's such an exciting time. This will be the last Sunday without football. You know what I love about this weekend? It's Labor Day weekend. With the way the NFL shifted the calendar, with the final cuts coming on Tuesday and the final waiver claims coming Wednesday, they have cleared it out so that the NFL takes one little break before the regular season begins. The problem with the break this year is that the Cowboys open the season on Thursday night, and we have Micah Parsons all through the weekend. So Micah Parsons is going to mess up people's weekends here, or has the potential to mess up people's weekends here. Trey Hendrickson is also out there. We'll see how those situations shake out over time here. But that is the one thing that threatens to mar what is usually a nice, quiet weekend as everybody begins to get ready for their fancy drafts in the start of the 2025 football season. All right, we hope everybody liked the podcast today. Please, what is the expression here, Ty? Help me out. Listen to us, rate us, subscribe to us. What do people say?
Like, rate, and review.
Like, rate, and review. Please like, rate, and review us. Ty, great job today. Thank you very much to Dan Stanzik. Thank you very much to Rob Lorenzo. Thank you very much to Adam Levitan and Evan Silva. We'll be back in this spot next week for the start of the 2025 NFL season. Until then, have a great Labor Day, everybody. Be well and stay safe.